cab over engine head, and you can see bad is written on there because turns out after magnafluxing there's a crack in it. It's hard to see, maybe you just kind of see it there from the exhaust valve coming out. It's cracked, which put a kind of a hard stop on making forward progress. I ended up finding another engine, a whole engine out of almost exactly the same vintage of truck. There it is. I pulled the head off. It's exactly the same casting number. And I've got this head right here, and it looks clean. I was actually able to run the donor engine head just a little bit before I pulled it apart. And now I've got it pretty well cleaned up. And I've made this, for lack of a better term, it's a redneck engine crane. It's on a pallet jack. It's got some reach there. That's a 8-foot 2x4, 5-foot high. That'll allow me to get this head into the cab over truck without hurting my back again, like I did getting the head out. This head weighs 80 pounds and it's awkward. And there's an oil passage tube that comes up. I think it's right here. And you got to thread that on. So I need a controlled method of getting this head back in there. So this little 2x4 apparatus, I know it's redneck, but hey, it works. I've tried lifting it, works just fine. Little ratchet strap on the back there. So we're going to get this thing into position and get on with getting the head back into position. And just checking the new head gasket, which I have there on the bad head compared to the copper one, which is the old one. Just checking to make sure that's correct. I did have a bad experience with a different vendor. There was the wrong head gasket, even though it was correctly listed. I do have the right one here, so we're ready to put this on now. All right, here we're set up, ready to get ready to lift it up and in here. And if we go back and like this, you can just see just how far up and in, and you can just barely see that copper oil lamp that we need to go over and down onto as we come into the block there. All right, so we've got it lifted into position. Get up here so you can kind of see, and now we're ready to start kind of lowering it down in and getting it positioned over that oil line. Now the head is into position and I've got the lift out of the way, so now we can get the all the head bolts down. We'll get that oil passage fittings, hooks up to the rocker arm assembly, and then we can move on to intake manifold. Now I got the head bolts all torqued down to spec. Spec is 70 to 80 pounds. I put them at about 75 pounds. So I started putting push rods in here, and this one right here, just I could feel it wasn't sitting down in the bore right there. I could feel it kind of going against something. So I started taking off the lifter cover here, and I don't know if you can see it here or not. Too dark without that, you can just barely see it right there. That's a lifter laying on its side in there. So we got to get the rest of that cover off and get that lifter back into position. Lifter cover off, and now you can see why that push rod wasn't sitting down in there. There's the lifter, popped out of its bore when I pulled the old ones out previously. So good thing we got this cover off. We'll get that fixed right. Then we continue on with the head assembly, getting the rockers on. Alright, we got the push rods in, lifter's all taken care of, rocker arm assembly snug back down, and so I'll have to clean up the gasket around the lifter cover there and get that thing back on. So anyway, getting closer. Alright, so here's the carburetor. It is an updraft carburetor because it is a cab over truck. There isn't the room for the downdraft carburetors like you normally see on these types of trucks. So it's pretty dirty. I'm just gonna do a little cleanup on it, open the bowl up, check the floats and all that fun stuff, and then from there we'll start get the intake manifold on. So let's get into this carburetor. So I finally got the carburetor at least mostly apart here. This is part of the accelerator pump here, and it goes in this bore, and this part was stuck down in there. So the rest of this didn't really want to come apart very well. I managed to make this little piece of wire that hooked on the underside of it in there, and then using the slide hammer I was able to finally get it knocked loose of inside that bore. So we got some cleanup to do. We've got some more jets here to take out. You can see how crusty it is down in there. There are some check balls underneath there based on the manual, so I need to be careful as I continue to pull this apart and get it cleaned up. Also, when I had the float bowl chamber flooded, the float bowl does have a very tiny crack right there. It's hard to see. So I'm going to need to try to solder that up as well. Because obviously if the float's got a crack, it can get gas in it. When that happens, it'll flood the carburetor. So I'm going to keep working on getting this apart and seeing if we can repair it. Alright, so I sandblasted the lower housing. And that turned out nice. I really got rid of the corrosion buildup down there in the bowl. And then I've polished the accelerator pump bore, and then cleaned up the accelerator pump itself and reassembled it. And now it slides down in there real nice and moves. So now we can start assembling some of this. Here's one of the check ball jets here. There's a little bitty silver ball. You can just barely see that. That was all corroded and crusty. I got that all free, and there's another one too. So we're going to start putting this thing slowly together. I still got a little bit of parts cleanup to do as I put this together, so we're going to get on with it. Alright, so here's the float. It had a crack there, and I got it all soldered up. It was kind of a pain because the whole thing this bracket came off, but we got it all soldered up. Holds, put it in a little bucket of water, and no more air bubbles. So now this is all set to go in. Normally I would get a carb kit for this. Unfortunately, the carb kit for this particular carburetor is back ordered. I'll probably go in and order one for later, but since time is limited, I want to get this thing to see if it'll run. So that's why we're reusing parts how we are right now. So anyway, back to it. We got some more jets and stuff to clean up and get assembled there in the top half of it. And there it's all together. Now we can go get the intake on and get this thing on and get closer to starting it up. Let's get to it. So in order to reach one of the nuts on the stud for the carburetor, I was inside underneath here, reaching through this hole to get up there to hit that nut to hold the carburetor on. Kind of a long reach and in a small uncomfortable spot, but somebody obviously a long time ago cut that nice hole in the inner fender, so it was easy to reach. So anyway, got the carburetor on now. So here we have a fuel pump. It's leaking around the diaphragm. It's not pumping. Diagnose that off, getting fuel to it. So we've got to tear into this. And there's the inside. Pretty craptastic. Alright, I grabbed this other fuel pump off the other engine, tested it with this hose into a can of gas, and it pumps just by pumping it by hand. So that looks promising. We're going to swap this on and see what we can get with it. Alright, so now I got the lifter cover back on, new gasket on that. I had to clean it all up and get all the other bad gasket off, so that's all sealed up good. I've got the lifters, or rather the rocker arms lash set pretty close now. It runs pretty smooth. We'll fire it up here shortly and give you another taste of that sweet 6-cylinder running. So. Alright, here we go. I had the gas shut off over the night, so it'll take a little bit to start it here. right, thanks for watching. Thanks everybody for watching. Like and subscribe.